American President Joe Biden is on a rampage mode. Not only has he destroyed the American economy in 1 year of his presidency, but he has also taken it upon himself to destroy that of all of the American allies. And guess what? His report card is unsurprisingly impressive in this regard. Almost every nation on the planet that followed Biden's lead in dealing with the Russia-Ukraine crisis is today suffering from its worst economic crisis. Hi and welcome to TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I'm your host Vedika. Let's begin. Let's start this video by highlighting the emergence of a worrisome trend across the globe. Soaring inflation is wreaking havoc on almost every nation that chose Biden over Putin. Let the data speak for itself. Inflation in South Korea has reached a 13-year high. Inflation in Japan hits the highest point in 20 years. Inflation in Germany reaches a 4-decades high. Inflation in Australia is surging at the fastest annual pace in 2 decades. The inflation rate in Canada surges to a fresh 30-year high. Do you know what these nations do have in common, apart from a beleaguered economy? Well, all of these nations are American allies. Yes, these nations chose to follow Biden's diktats instead of pursuing their national interests, and that's why they lost the plot. You see, Russia is a global powerhouse providing Europe and East Asia with gas supplies and other means to fuel their economy. So, when Joe Biden asked all these nations to stop importing gas, coal, and crude from Russia, economic crisis and soaring inflation in these nations became imminent. These nations failed to understand that while punishing Russia for its actions in Ukraine was important, keeping their house in order by securing energy supplies from Russia or wherever was even more needful. And then we come to nations like India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the ASEAN region. These nations have approached the crisis with a neutral standing, and expectedly, these economies have performed far better than that of Western nations. In March, the inflation rate in India reached a 17-month high. In April 2022, the inflation rate in Saudi Arabia was faring around a mere 2%. As per IMF data, inflation in Asia is expected to hit 3.4% in 2022. It may be mentioned that the economic crisis in China has dominated these inflation numbers in Asia more than the Russia-Ukraine crisis. All in all, by staying neutral in this Russia-Ukraine crisis, these nations have insulated themselves from the war-borne economic ramifications. For example, India, a nation of 1.4 billion people, has so far successfully navigated this global inflation crisis by importing discounted oil from Russia. Had India followed Biden's lead in sanctioning Russia, millions in the South Asian nation would have gone bankrupt. Only this April it was reported that India has successfully eliminated extreme poverty from the country even after the pandemic. So, it makes complete sense for India to keep importing cheap crude from Russia instead of joining Biden's reckless anti-Russia campaign. Experts fear that this prolonged phase of soaring global inflation heralds the onset of 2008-like economic crisis in the world. Increased inflation, bundled with falling GDP and rising unemployment in Europe and North America, suggests that the world could soon hit a recession that could strike the global economy in the most painful manner. Global economic stability requires unhindered energy supplies and a predictable geopolitical environment. The senile administration in the US, led by a 79-year-old nasty-old man, has destroyed both of them. The most powerful country on this planet, the USA, has been playing the role of a peacebreaker during the crisis. And USA's allies, who had counted on Biden's seemingly promising war against Russia, are suddenly finding themselves hanging in the balance. Finally, they are realizing the folly of relying on the wisdom of a 79-year-old man, literally with no skin in the game.